is Esther McVey, MP, former cabinet minister in Theresa May's government during the Brexit dramas, former leadership contender in 2019. And I have to say, judging by some of the comments and tweets coming in, I think many of my listeners might rather Esther was in charge than the current Prime Minister. But anyway, Esther, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us.
Morning, Richard.
Good morning. Great to see you, and really appreciate your time and your thoughts. Goodness me, the dramas are piling up on the government. They really do need a firm tiller and some strong leadership. Where are you at in terms of this energy crisis? You've been a strong, outspoken critic in a very principled way of many issues. What are your thoughts on where we are? And I'd be interested in your thoughts on where you are and your constituents' views on fracking, given that I think your constituency is above the Boland Shale.
Well, I think you are now at the helm of this debate we should have been having for a long time, and that is, what do we need to ensure that we've got a reliable, affordable, secure supply of energy? And for just far too long, what we've had is a debate on decarbonisation and going green. And whilst that, is a positive argument to have, how do we get there? How do we make it greener? What are the new industries? What is the way the world is going? You still have to ensure that you have got a reliable, affordable energy source. And that now is coming into clear focus when we're saying, where are we getting our energy from? How much have we got? Are we, who are we reliant on around the world, and what sources are we reliant on? So I think this debate now, unfortunately, it's come at a crunch point, but we need to have that.
And in a sense, in the nicest possible way, I don't want to rely on anybody else but our own energy sources, our own energy reserves, our own tidal power, in order to create cheap, abundant, reliable, affordable energy for all of us in the UK. And it's only literally, Esther, 4 years since, in the 2017 Conservative Manifesto, where fracking was going to be, and the use of cheap shale gas was going to drive tens of thousands of jobs. It was going to be part of the solution. And that very quickly, with just a few sort of what I call eco-bullies and zealots whinging and complaining, all of a sudden that just got ditched.
And as I said, what you frequently see, and this is what we've seen, is sort of big rhetoric, big global meetings of parliamentarians from around the world at G20, G7, all wanting to make great declarations going forward. We will be green by this date. We will be net zero by this date. They set it probably at a date that they will never be there. But what we didn't do was have that debate. How do we get there for each country? What is possible? What isn't? And that really is what we've got to do. So you're quite right. We could have and should have not only done more and done that extra research and followed maybe what the Americans did on fracking. I know at the time, it was about 2019, people were concerned with, pure water. Would there be contamination into the water supplies? And of course, we had to address that. And if the research wasn't up to date, of course, we wouldn't have done it right then. But what we shouldn't have done is stop it altogether and say, we won't do. Let's instead make ourselves more reliable on, other sources, which wasn't in our control. So we didn't do that in 2019 for what, as you say, for whatever reason. And then we also didn't pursue on the nuclear path that we were meant to go. So what have we got now is 7 nuclear sort of reactors, which in the course of the next decade will be coming out of use and service. So we've got 20% thereabouts on nuclear, and that will halve. So in every way, we've got to look. What have we got?
Absolutely. So I'm delighted you raised the nuclear point, because I was going to come on to that, because we are building a new power station at Hinkley Point. I touched in my Sunday sermon earlier this morning the fact that that was being financed with billions of pounds of Chinese state money, which I have to say I feel very uncomfortable with. And then suggestions that Sizewell and Bradwell could also be literally designed and operated by the Chinese, nuclear power generation company. Are you comfortable with that? Because I have to say, Esther, I'm not at all.
So this has been going on for some time, these discussions, and it was signed off, I think it was 2016 under Theresa May, to get the Hinkley Point. But since then, we have seen, what would we call it, a muscular China extending their reach in many ways, and people have only come alert to that fact in the last couple of years. So we've seen a sort of change there. Equally, you say that China could be happy to carry on at Hinkley Point, but they're told if they're going to be forced out of Sizewell and Bradwell, they may pull out of that altogether. So again, you've got to look, where are you getting your money to go forward with that? So we're at a very precarious time in our history on sort of energy resources.
Sure.
And like you, I look at sort of what America did with fracking. They were a net importer of 15%. When they looked at how to use the fracking, the natural gas in their country, they're now a net exporter, and we would have those capabilities. And I just think, yes, if it's not safe, you wouldn't pursue it, but let's do that extra sort of research to make sure that we are.
Indeed. I've just lost you there, Esther. But also, and it's interesting you raised the point about where are the billions going to come from. Well, the truth is, I'm a great believer in what I call a win-win solution, where you have private sector expertise, but actually the cheapest finance for long-term critical national infrastructure is, of course, using the government's balance sheet rather than outsourcing that to private equity groups that are looking for huge returns, as opposed to the much lower cost government money. And there's some interesting reports in the I think in the Sunday Times today that actually the government is now looking at investing alongside and helping Rolls-Royce, a great British company, a great British brand, because they've got some world-leading technology in smaller, much faster to build, much cheaper to build nuclear reactors called small modular reactors. So I'm a great fan that we should be advancing that and accelerating that. What are your thoughts on that, Esther?
Yeah, and some people have been championing that for a long time. People like Lord Lilly has been championing that. And I've been saying, why don't we do that? As you say, they are cheaper, they are smaller, they are more local, and that could be the way forward, and it could be a win-win either way. But we've got to now have all of these ideas on the table, and we should have for a long period of time, because it won't be just one energy source. We'll no doubt need a multiple of energy sources, different things that we can do. And I think that was the problem as we looked at renewables, the solar and the wind, and we've had that increase as a percentage share of our energy, but people at the time said it wasn't reliable, which is what we've got now in September with hardly any wind, but we were really reliant on that. And then what did we have? We had to bring in, liquid gas from whether it's Russia, whether it's Norway, whether it's Denmark, and we made ourselves very vulnerable to other sort of conditions. And that's why I think we've got to move on and become more self-sustainable.
I agree, Esther. I want to move on, please, to a couple of other issues, because you voted against the government, against many of the lockdown rules on multiple occasions, because I think you were concerned, as I was, about the collateral damage from lockdowns, all the other health issues, that non-COVID health issues people may have. We had Professor Carol Sikora, oncologist, on just before the top of the hour. Do you fear that your worst fears are being played out now in terms of the non-COVID issues that we're seeing, the deaths, the huge waiting lists that we're seeing on some of these illnesses?
I have always said, and I wrote a long time ago, there is a cost of COVID. There is also a cost of lockdown. And when you fundamentally close your country down for 18 months, there is a cost. As you said, you had Professor Carol Sikora on earlier, very much talking about the health issues, whether that's cancer, whether that's mental health. But equally, you have it on poverty, loss of jobs. There is a whole host of things. And actually, as we talk about the energy crisis now, what we saw was this infrastructure, the nuclear power stations, etc., not having the maintenance. A lot of that was COVID related too. So we're seeing it across the board. When you close a country down, what happens? You haven't got that regular maintenance across the board. And this was some of the issues. So what I'd said was, let's look at it in the round. Of course, the scientists and the medical people focused on that COVID issue, that immediate COVID issue. But we as politicians should have looked in the round, the full 360 degrees, and what would that mean? And then when we had the vaccination come along, we could have come out even, quicker.
Of course. I think we're so right. My sense is that the people, the country, wouldn't accept further lockdowns. I think I'm heartened that actually people are beginning to realise that we do have to live with this. Before we let you go, Esther, you were obviously a very principled Brexiteer like myself. We have got this issue of which is essentially a global shortage of lorry drivers, not only just here in the UK, but across Europe and elsewhere, we understand. So the government said literally until, I think literally this weekend, that they weren't going to extend short-term working visas for EU lorry drivers who may or may not be available. But now they seem to have U-turned completely and said they will grant them until Christmas. Where are you as a Brexiteer on this? Would you be, if you were in charge, if you had won that leadership election, would you be granting short-term visas, or would you be saying no, actually let the market talk, pay more to the lorry drivers?
Look, this is another issue as well from lockdown. 40,000 people never had their tests. Other thousands of people haven't got their licenses through. So there was a lot going on. Now, some Brexiteers will say, look, we wanted to take back control, and take back control doesn't necessarily mean closing your borders. But what I would like to see, because obviously there is an issue for lorry drivers, it has been for a long period of time. And it is about their work. It is about their conditions. It is about sort of the 24/7 sort of 18-hour or it's a 24/7 world within which they work, and we've never addressed that. So this has happened over a long, long period of time, and as you rightly say, there is a shortage. I don't know where they're getting them in Europe. There is a significant shortage of drivers in Europe. There is a significant shortage of drivers in America too. It is actually about that job and probably conditions there, but I would like to see sort of British jobs for British workers, and let's see what we can do to get some of those people who should have their license now, who should have had their tests to be working. But it's going to take a long time to solve this. It's not going to be done over the weekend, is it?
So that sounds like a no to me. You wouldn't be granting the visas short term.
Well, we've left ourselves in such a tricky situation right now. We're going to have to do all we can do. But, if those jobs aren't there, we're sort of saying something. We're going to grant visas, but actually, is anybody coming forward for them? So, as I said, I believe that we're in control of what we do. If we do need people, I guess we're going to have to reach out. But we've left it as, I'm afraid, politics to me is becoming incredibly myopic, and we're constantly firefighting and not looking at 5-10 year blocks of time where we get in place proper methods to which we solve problems, which is exactly what we've done with the energy, let alone the drivers.
Esther, thank you so much. Could you have a word in the shell-like ear of the Prime Minister?